the offering at Chenkiri Bay. My name is Rithi, and for 2 years my life was concrete, steel, and the relentless ambition of one man, Akhenavam. I was his project manager, the one who translated his billion-riel dreams into blueprints and roaring machinery. Our final masterpiece, the Chenkiri Bay Paradise Resort, was his crown jewel, a 7-star sanctuary carved into the pristine coast of Koh Rong Samloem, where Phnom Penh's elite could escape the city's dust and noise. We built paradise on a spreadsheet. Every infinity pool, every private villa with its imported Italian marble, every perfectly manicured blade of grass was accounted for. Akhenavam was a man who believed the world could be tamed, paved over, and sold back to you at a premium. He saw nature not as something to be respected, but as a raw material, an untidy canvas waiting for his signature. I bought into his vision. I had to. I grew up in a small village in Kampot where the spirits of the land were as real as the monsoon rains. My grandmother would leave offerings of fruit and incense at the base of the ancient banyan tree, her lips moving in silent prayer to the Nikta, the guardian spirits. But in the gleaming towers of Phnom Penh, such beliefs felt like faded photographs from a forgotten time. To succeed, you had to be modern. You had to believe in profit, not phantoms. And so, I ignored the whispers from the local construction crew. When they spoke of a cold spot on the beach where the sand never seemed to get warm, even under the midday sun, I told them to check the geological surveys. When they claimed their tools would go missing near the construction site of the main villa, only to reappear days later, rusted and warped as if they'd spent a decade at the bottom of the sea, I threatened to dock their pay for carelessness. But there was one thing even Akhenavam's money couldn't move. One stubborn, ugly blemish on his perfect canvas. A single banana tree. It wasn't a grand, beautiful tree. It was old, its trunk scarred and dark, its leaves a little tattered. It stood defiantly just beyond the edge of the main villa's sprawling deck, right where the manicured lawn was meant to meet the white sand of the private beach. It ruined the perfect, unobstructed view of the turquoise sea. The architect hated it. The landscape designer pleaded to have it removed. Akhenavam, a man who would bulldoze a century-old forest for a better view from his golf course, refused. "Leave it," was all he ever said, his voice flat and final. He offered no explanation. We all just assumed it was some strange, uncharacteristic flicker of sentimentality. A memory from his childhood, perhaps. So we built around it. The concrete and glass palace rose up, and the old banana tree stood in its shadow, looking utterly, stubbornly out of place. The week of the grand opening, the air changed. The usual thick, humid blanket of the Cambodian coast grew heavier, more oppressive. The cicadas, our constant, shrill soundtrack, fell silent. The sky took on a bruised, yellowish tint, even when there were no clouds. The local fishermen, men whose families had read the moods of this water for generations, started pulling their boats high up onto the shore, lashing them down with thick ropes. I found one of the elders, a man named Ta Ben, mending his nets near the edge of our property. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles carved by sun and salt. "Big storm coming, Bong Rithi," he said, not looking up from his work. His voice was rough like gravel. "The forecast only says light rain, Ta Ben," I replied, trying to sound reassuring. We had foreign dignitaries and investors flying in. We couldn't afford a storm. He finally looked up, and his eyes, cloudy with age, were sharp and clear. "The sky has a forecast. The sea has a memory. They are not always the same. This land, it does not like your big glass house." He pointed a gnarled finger towards the lone banana tree. "You left the grandmother's house, but you built your walls right up to her front door. She is not a patient host." The grandmother. The name sent a cold trickle down my spine, a whisper of my own grandmother's stories. Stories of local spirits tied to the land who demanded respect. I dismissed it. Superstition. We were in the 21st century. Our resort had a state-of-the-art surge protector and a backup generator the size of a small truck. We were safe. That evening, Akhenavam stood in the main villa, the one he'd reserved for himself. It was a monument to his ego, with a single, floor-to-ceiling wall of reinforced glass that looked out over the bay. He held a heavy crystal tumbler of single malt, swirling the amber liquid as the first winds began to pick up. "Let it rain," he chuckled, his reflection a ghostly twin in the darkening glass. "It will wash the construction dust off our paradise. We will be christened by the heavens." I wasn't so sure. The wind didn't just whistle, it didn't howl. It carried a sound I had never heard before, a low, guttural, rhythmic chanting that seemed to rise from the very bedrock beneath our feet. It was a sound that felt ancient, primordial. It vibrated in my teeth, in my bones. I told myself it was just the wind moving through the unique rock formations of the bay, a trick of acoustics, but my heart knew better. Then came the smell. The air pushed in through the filtered ventilation system should have smelled of nothing, but a new scent began to permeate the sealed villa. Salt, yes, but it was thick, coppery, almost like blood, and woven through it was another smell, sickly sweet and deeply unsettling. The scent of bruised jasmine flowers, the kind left as offerings at a funeral. Brine and bruised jasmine, the smell of grief. A fine mist began to coat the inside of the massive glass wall. I touched it. It was salty, sticky. I looked at the window frames, the German-engineered seals guaranteed to be airtight and waterproof. Salt spray, thick as blood plasma, was weeping through the solid seals, running in tiny, dirty rivulets down the pristine glass. Akinavong saw it too. His confident smile faltered for the first time. He put his drink down, the crystal making a sharp clink on the marble countertop. The storm hit. It was not a storm, it was a siege. Rain didn't fall, it flew horizontally like millions of tiny glass needles. The wind shrieked, the ancient chant weaving in and out of its fury. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died, plunging us into a terrifying darkness broken only by the strobing flashes of lightning. The emergency lights kicked in, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like demons. Then the deep hum of the backup generator sputtered, coughed, and fell silent. The only sounds left were the roar of the storm and the frantic pounding of my own heart. Akinavong and I were trapped in his glass palace, watching the world end, through the deluge. My eyes were drawn to the single point of stillness in the chaos, the banana tree. Its broad leaves were not being shredded by the gale-force winds. They were not whipping around in a frenzy. They were moving, yes, but with a slow, deliberate, impossible grace. The entire tree, from its base to its leafy crown, was bowing. It would bend low, its leaves almost scraping the churning, sandy ground, hold for a moment, and then rise again. A perfect, rhythmic unison bow towards the churning, furious sea. It wasn't being pushed by the wind. It was beckoning. It was praying. It was inviting something in. Akinavong let out a small, strangled gasp. He was staring at the tree, his face pale in the flashing lightning, his usual mask of supreme confidence shattered into a million pieces. The single malt in his hand was trembling so violently that the amber liquid sloshed over the rim, unnoticed. "It can't be," he whispered, his voice hoarse with a terror I had never seen in him. "I built on top of it. The concrete, the rebar, it should have been enough." "Enough for what, Akina?" I asked, my own voice shaking. "What are you talking about?" He turned to me, his eyes wide with a primal fear. The fear of a man who has just realized that the rules he lived by, the rules of money and power, were utterly meaningless. "The warnings," he stammered. "That old woman, Ta Ben, the workers, they all said this place was sacred, that we were building on consecrated ground." A flash of lightning illuminated the bay, and for a split second the churning waves looked like 1,000 grasping hands reaching for the shore. The pressure in the room was immense now. It wasn't just the storm. It felt like the entire weight of the ocean was pressing in on us, on the glass, on my own chest. It was a cold, heavy presence, a focused and malevolent will. It wanted something. "Why didn't you cut down the tree, Akina?" I demanded, grabbing his arm. "Tell me." He flinched, pulling away from me. "We tried," he confessed, his voice cracking. "At the very beginning of the project, I ordered it cleared with everything else. The first worker who took a chainsaw to it, the chain snapped, flew back and cut his arm to the bone. The next day, another man tried with an axe. He had a heart attack on the spot. A healthy man, not yet 30. He was packing now, a caged animal. The crew refused to go near it after that. They said the Nikta of the tree was angry. They said we had to make an offering to ask for permission. I laughed at them. I am Akhinavong. I don't ask permission from ghosts in a banana tree. So you just left it. I buried it, he screamed, his voice hysterical over the roar of the wind. The foundation of this villa, it's a cage. We dug deep, poured a concrete slab 3 meters thick around its roots, reinforced with steel. I thought I could contain it, imprison it, build my palace on top of its grave. The rhythmic bowing of the banana tree became more insistent, faster. It was no longer just beckoning, it was demanding. And then he told me the worst part. There was a stone, he whispered, sinking into a chair, his face in his hands. On the beach, right where the tree stands. Not a large stone, but it was smooth and dark and shaped almost like a sleeping woman. The fishermen called it the heart of the grandmother. They left offerings there. Jasmine, rice wine. They said it was the anchor of the spirit, the place where her power rested. My blood ran cold. I knew of stones like that. Every village has one. A sacred object, a focus point for the local guardian spirit. To move one is the ultimate act of desecration. What did you do with it, Akhina? I asked, dreading the answer. He looked up, his face a mask of utter despair. It was in the way of the infinity pool's filtration system. I had them use it as landfill for the foundation of the pier. A deep groaning crack echoed through the villa, not the sound of wind or thunder. It was the sound of the reinforced, inch-thick glass wall beginning to surrender. A spiderweb of fractures appeared in the center of the pane, directly in front of the bowing banana tree. The chanting outside grew louder, clearer. It was no longer just on the wind. It was inside the room with us, a chorus of ancient, angry voices. The immense pressure on my chest became a crushing weight. It was the weight of a deep ocean, the cold, silent pressure of the abyss, and it was focused entirely on Akhinavong. He felt it too. He was gasping for air, clutching at his throat as if invisible hands were strangling him. An offering, he croaked, his eyes fixed on the cracking glass. She wants a final offering. He finally understood. All his life, he had made offerings of money, of bribes, of power, to get what he wanted from the world of men. But this was a different kind of debt. This was a debt to the land, to the spirits he had defiled. A debt that could not be paid with money. The glass wall did not shatter. It did not explode outwards. With a deafening boom that was simultaneously a roar and a sigh, it imploded. It turned to a fine, glittering powder and was sucked out into the storm. The ocean entered the room. It wasn't a wave. It was a solid wall of black water, wind, and rage. It didn't just flood the space, it consumed it. The imported furniture, the marble countertops, the priceless art, all of it was swept away in an instant. The water was unnaturally cold, a deep, bone-aching cold that felt ancient and dead. It swirled around my legs, but it had no interest in me. I was just an obstacle. It went for him. Tendrils of water, as solid and deliberate as arms, wrapped around Akhinavong's legs, his waist, his chest. He screamed, a thin, pathetic sound that was instantly swallowed by the storm. He clawed at the polished floor, his manicured fingernails scraping uselessly against the marble. But the ocean was too strong. It dragged him. It pulled him out of his ruined palace, across his shattered deck, and onto the sand. It dragged him directly towards the banana tree, which now stood perfectly still, its leaves raised as if in triumph. The water pulled him to the base of the tree, to the very spot where the heart of the grandmother once lay. The last I saw of Akhinavong, the great Tycoon, the master of the universe, was his terrified face, illuminated by a flash of lightning as the churning sea pulled him under. He disappeared into the black water without a trace. and as soon as he was gone, the pressure vanished. The chanting stopped. The incredible, malevolent force that had filled the room simply receded. The storm did not die down gradually. It just stopped. One moment it was a raging apocalypse. The next, an eerie, profound silence. The wind was gone. The rain was gone. The only sound was the gentle lapping of waves on the shore. I was left shivering in the flooded, ruined villa, surrounded by the wreckage of a fool's ambition. Through the gaping hole where the window once stood, I could see the sky. The clouds were parting. A few stars were beginning to appear. And on the beach, standing serene and untouched by the cataclysm, was the lone banana tree. Its leaves drooped peacefully in the still, silent air. It looked as if it had simply been waiting. I stumbled out of the wreckage and onto the beach. The Chankiri Bay Paradise Resort was a ruin. Villas were torn from their foundations. The magnificent infinity pool was a crater filled with sand and debris. The pier where the sacred stone was buried was simply gone, as if it had never existed. But the fishermen's huts further down the beach were untouched. Their boats pulled high onto the shore were safe. The official report called it a freak typhoon, a rogue wave of unprecedented power, an act of God. The insurance companies would spend years arguing over the details. Akhenavong's body was never found. He was listed as lost at sea, a tragic accident. But I know the truth. I was the witness. I left that island the next day and I have never been back. I work a simple office job in Phnom Penh now. I live in a small apartment. I have no ambition for greatness, for palaces of glass and steel. Sometimes, on hot, humid nights when a storm is brewing, I think I can still smell it. That impossible, sickeningly sweet scent of bruised jasmine on a salt-laced wind. And I remember the look on Akhenavong's face as the sea came to collect its debt. Be careful what ground you build your dreams on. There are things in this land, ancient and powerful things, that do not care about your money or your plans. They remember every stone, every tree, every grain of sand. And if you show them disrespect, if you try to cage them or bury them, they will wait. They have all the time in the world, and they will demand an offering, one you will have no choice but to pay.